Hey everybody, welcome back to the LA Times main stage. Thank you. I'm Stuart K. Robinson. I'm your host. Good crowd here. You're here for a reason, am I right? All right. Just for you, I made a call to make sure the weather would hold up for all of us. So you're welcome for that. Are you ready for our next author? Okay, you can't be tame. You got to make great noise for these two. This is great. We're going to turn the page and light this thing up. And whether you know him from Disney or Broadway or YouTube or the silver screen, or you don't know him at all, one fact remains. Our next guest's work never fails to bring people together. So today, we're going to get a rare opportunity to sit in on a lively conversation between this amazing artist and comedian and journalist Jon Lovett as they discuss, our guest's delightful memoir, In Gad We Trust. I think you know who's coming up here. It's called In Gad We Trust, A Tell Some. So it's time for us to get excited and prove that you believe in Gad. So make some noise for Jon Lovett and Josh Gad.
Do you know that it was only recently, John, that I realized the lyrics to this song?
Did you know that it's only about 10 seconds ago that several people here realized I'm not Jon Lovitz? Can you applaud if you're one of those people?
Brave.
Okay.
Brave admission.
Well, at least you get to see Josh Gad.
I loved you on early SNL, by the way.
Thank you. All right. We have a lot to get through. I'm going to signpost my card here that has our whole talk on it. Early life failures. That's going to be most of it. Fun stories about Hollywood, deep and poignant closing conversation. And if there's time, there'll be questions.
Great. Buckle up.
All right. So, I first heard of Josh Gad, not when he was in 1600 Penn, a cult classic television show that aired for one perfect season on NBC.
That John created, by the way.
Not Book of Mormon, not Olaf. But actually, I was at the National Speech and Debate Finals, where Josh really came into his own. And I remember hearing about it because my forensics teacher, Lydia Esslinger, one of the all-time greats, said,
great.
I just saw something so amazing at the original oratory final. This kid is gonna be a star. And I do think that is maybe one of the, if not the moment of transition where people really started to say, oh, this guy, he's got something.
Yeah, they said it just like that. They had a stroke midway through the recognition.
So, the reason Lydia Esslinger was my forensics coach, I think for a lot of people that go into theater, comedy, acting,
political
speech writing, that was a swerve. That teacher that saw something in them is really important. So can you just talk about your coach, Brent Pasola?
Yeah. So I like a lot of you, I thought forensics was the act of cutting up dead bodies and researching what you find. It's also a children's activity in high schools. And so speech and debate, to me, always meant, you get up there, you do like Lincoln Douglas style stuff, but I didn't know that there was this interp side of it. And they have dramatic interpretation, duo, humorous interpretation. So my coach, Brent Pasola, God rest his soul, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was this guy who was larger than life, and he saw something in me, and he allowed me to sort of find my way in this activity. And as a result of finding my way in this activity, I started to discover that I was a born performer and writer, and it gave me confidence. We would compete on college campuses. We would go to Harvard, Emory, and when you're in a competition environment, it's amazing how it forces you to really hone in on your skills because you are being judged. and you are being judged in a manner in which you will win or lose. And my sophomore year, I did a DI, dramatic interp. I took third at nationals, and I figured I peaked. And I sat in on this event called Original Oratory, and I fell in love. And what John didn't tell you is his coach was a legend who I absolutely obsessed with. She had coached some like champions, former champions in oratory,
and some very interesting quarterfinalists.
So I watched
some pretty handsome quarterfinalists.
So I watched this event. I fell in love, and I said, was it that bad, John?
No, keep going.
Okay. And I said...
Not the book. All right, there you go.
There it is. So I said, I would like to try this. And my coach goes, why? You're not a writer. And I said, I know, but I want to challenge myself to be one. And so I wrote an oratory, and I won the national tournament. And then I came back the following year with an HI and oratory, and I won both HI and oratory. And to this day, kids will stop me and they will say, I love you, and I think it's for like Frozen or Book of Mormon or New Girl or whatever, and they have watched my speech in high school. And that is so crazy to think that like kids are watching me as a 18-year-old and appreciating what I did at their age. And it's the coolest thing ever. So that was very much the catalyst for sort of the rest of my career.
Now, I want to come back to this later, but that teacher, a lot of people didn't like that teacher, right?
He was a hard ass. He was the first teacher in my life I ever said, are there kids here?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're the little
good.
people.
He's the first, hi guys. He's the first teacher I ever said, fuck you, dude.
All right, we're going to return to that.
So we constantly butt heads, and the reason we butted heads is he knew what I was capable of, and he was trying to get it out of me, and I respect the fact that he never coddled us as students. He always pushed us, and a lot of times that was uncomfortable. He made me Tevye as a sophomore in high school, and then he would basically tell me, you suck. And I'm like, yes, I've never lived in the shoes of a man with 5 children, let alone 1 child, being chased out by a pogrom. So I don't have these experiences.
Man, that pogrom scene, I just think every Jewish child that saw that pogrom scene, wherever you saw it, I saw it on Broadway. I didn't see your
I saw it on Broadway too.
Yeah, it's really remember
With
it.
Topol.
Yeah, really screwed me up.
It's a rite of passage for Jews.
You gotta go see Fiddler. You gotta go see Fiddler one time. All right, we'll get to your successes. Let's talk about failures. You were rejected by Juilliard.
Yeah.
You submitted tape after tape to SNL.
You rejected every time.
Yeah, you weren't on SNL.
No, I know. I'm well aware.
And now, you were also very close but unsuccessful at getting cast on the show Punk'd with Ashton Kutcher. You didn't get on Punk'd.
No, they brought me in. Let me tell you something. You really have to find your inner asshole to be on Punk'd. And it was the single worst experience because I'm genuinely like, I like to be a nice guy.
I see you more on Punk'd than as Tevye.
And the audition process for Punk'd was be as cruel as you can be to as many people as possible. I knew it was not going to be for me, but that's when I met Ashton for the first time, who would later
play Steve Jobs.
Please, Steve Jobs.
And you played Wozniak.
I did.
And the year where there were 2 movies about Jobs.
We were the Armageddon and Deep Impact of our generation.
I think of it more as Dante's Peak and Volcano. But that's like a sect thing, you know. That's an Episcopalian, Presbyterian thing. All right, Groundlings didn't advance you.
Nope.
Wow.
This is really fun, John. Keep telling me about it.
I'm almost done.
All the people who hate me.
I have one card with notes. This is a half a card. The woman you loved at first thought you were, and this is a quote, both
Jesus
arrogant
Christ.
and gay as hell.
Yes, that is true.
And you really did give up and decide to go to law school.
I did. When you are told by the woman you love that you're gay and arrogant, there's no choice but to go to law school. And so I went to apply. I was going to take the LSAT. both my brothers are lawyers, and I told my mother that I was going to go to law school, thinking, this is a great, you tell your Jewish mom you're going to go to law school, outside of telling her you're going to medical school, this is the greatest day of her life. And she started crying. And I said, why are you crying? And she said, I am so disappointed in you. I said, you're disappointed? She goes, you have been dreaming of being a performer for 15 years. And after 2 years, you want to quit? That is an act of cowardice. And I was stunned. And also I was like, fuck you, Mom. But thank you. And I had gotten a call from my best friend Seth Gable and Bryce Dallas Howard, and they said, we saw a show on Broadway called the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Thank you, people in the way back, for cheering. And
Fucking nerds.
And there's only one person on earth who can replace the star Dan Fogler, and that's you. I didn't even get into musical theater at Carnegie Mellon, so I was like, not a chance. And
I missed that failure. That's a mistake on
Yeah,
my, that
yeah.
should have been here. I'm sorry.
next time.
I forgot it.
And so I auditioned, and that was my first break. And I wouldn't have gotten it had it not been for Mom pushing me.
What I was thinking about when I was reading that is there's a certain percentage of people who give up, not realizing that they would have made it. But then there are a percentage of people that never give up and they never make it. And it's impossible to know. It's impossible to know whether you should be worrying more about a false positive or a false negative in that situation. But how soon after you, so how soon from I think I'm out, I'm gonna go on law school, go to law school?
3 months.
3 months later. 3 months later.
I mean, it really was miraculous. And the whole thing, as I write in the book, was like a series of fortunate events. Like, it was the craziest path that you could imagine of me getting that job.
So now, you had been kind of grinding it out, trying to make it in television, but actually to get back into television and film, Broadway became your way in. I want to run through some funny moments from your success. We've reached the success portion of the card.
This is the worst game of life I've ever played in.
Talk about the moment you came to a door, and behind the door was Jeff Goldblum in a bathrobe.
There was a girl at Carnegie Mellon who I knew, and I had just come out here having graduated. And she said, hey, will you come over to me at my boyfriend's house for dinner? And I was like, yeah, of course. Back then, you got, how many of you remember the Thomas Guide? That, like, yeah, okay. So before there was GPS, we had large books. And we had to drive with this large book and basically not die driving. And so she told me that this boyfriend of hers, who she didn't name, lived in a place called Mount Olympus. And I'm like, yes, I know it from the movie Hercules. I will go there.
It's like, you may be picturing like the Parthenon. Now replace it with the ugliest McMansion you've ever seen in your life. Go on.
It's true. So I'm driving up this very steep hill. I get to this large gate. It looks like it's out of Jurassic Park. I get to the front door. Standing in a bathrobe is film star Jeff Goldblum and this girl. They invite me in. They're both in matching robes. And Jeff invites me to sit down. And I'm like, you are Jeff Goldblum. What's happening right now? And he sits and he goes, what do you do? And I said, I'm an actor. He said, oh, so am I. I said, no, I know. That I know. And he said something to the extent of, are you happy? I said, yes. Are you happy? I said, yes. I don't know why my Jeff Goldblum is turning into Captain Kirk, but so and then I figured out that we are playing an acting exercise game called the Meisner technique. And it is the most surreal experience of my life. And at the end of it, he asks me if I would like to audit his class. And I was like, why do you have you're Jeff Goldblum. You have Jurassic Park money. And suffice it to say, I didn't audit his class, but that was week 1 in Hollywood, which was also when I met Robert Downey Jr.
Oh yeah, you met him at a coffee bean.
At a coffee bean.
Kenneth Branagh, you show up in, I want to say Budapest or something?
No, London.
Oh. Was it in Budapest?
I've never been to Budapest, John.
So you meet Kenneth Branagh in London, and you're there to do Murder on the Orient Express. He's playing Hercule Poirot.
Yeah.
Poirot. And what happened when you walked in to meet him? You thought you were just going to say hi.
Well, I had just landed, and if you fly to London from LA, you are properly jet lagged. And my driver tells me that we are going straight to set, which is very unusual. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And I figure they're going to do like a hair and makeup test. And I show up, and we are they take me to, we're shooting in a place called Leavesden, which is like a former artillery hub and like airplane hangar, very industrial. And we go to like one of these empty warehouses, and inside is like a little train caboose with Sir Kenneth Branagh to you.
I didn't fight a war to use their phrases. We beat those people, so we don't use sir, damn, dame, captain, duchess. I don't care about any of it.
So
it's Judy and Ken to me.
Sir Kenneth Branagh is in full garb with his mustache, and he starts interviewing me as a suspect. I had just gotten off of a fucking plane, and I am already in character with Sir Kenneth Branagh, and it was one of the most incredible exercises I've ever done, because when you are so unprepared, you have no choice but to be in the moment. And I was so terrified. I was terrified that this man was going to fire me for not being prepared, and he knew that, and it played beautifully into the character and the relationship with Poirot, and it was actually like an exercise I was so grateful for.
I would like to read a quote from the book In Gad We Trust. I feel blessed to have worked with Judi Dench twice, although not as blessed the second time, which involved me eating through the earth while shitting the remains out my asshole like a fire extinguisher. Does Judi Dench have gambling debts? What? How do the two of you? How does she end up in a film we all love, Artemis Fowl?
Oh boy!
And what was
the title of my next book is "You Win Some, You Lose Some." No, it was one of those things where we had both worked with Ken. We loved working with Ken. He was adapting this very famous book, and making movies is hard. You go in with the best of intentions. Scripts often are excellent, and then when you're making the movie, it doesn't come out the way you intended it to come out. But as we were on set and we were working through the scene, and I was literally being told how the CGI of shitting dirt was going to look, I looked over at my co-star and I was like, I know how I got here. How did she get here? My first encounter with Dame Judi Dench, a quick side, we were on the set of Murder on the Orient Express. Everybody was terrified of going up to her. It was like 5 a.m. in the makeup trailer. And I saw this fear, this communal fear, and I said, I'm going to break the ice. I walk up to her. She's got like cucumbers on her eyes. She's laying back. And I lean down and I whisper to her, Dame Judi Dench. More like, damn Judi Dench. And she looked up at me and she's like, you and I are going to be fast friends.
But she got you a present.
Some
sort of pillow. What did the pillow say?
Back up 6 inches, Josh Gad.
So, I think that gives you a flavor. All right. Now we're gonna get to the poignant section.
Oh,
that's where we're at. I'm keeping us on track. So you have this really intense relationship with your high school debate coach, really instrumental. then when you make it to Broadway, you're in this role, you're finally having this experience of going out on stage and performing night after night. You audition for James Lupine, who gives you a really hard time, but keeps moving you further along in the process. And it never stops being a really hard time, right?
Does it ever?
Well, I think jobs can be hard. Doing something well night after night can be hard. But it sounds like Lupine was a jerk to you.
He led with a cruelty that I think made sense for him. And we have since talked about the process. And at the time, it really messed me up because I felt very scared. I felt scared going on stage. I felt like I was constantly at risk of losing the job. I felt like I was letting them down. And what he did do that was very valuable, like Pisola before him, was he pushed me in a way that made me have to be okay being uncomfortable in my own skin. Be okay dealing with adversity in a manner in which I think prepped me for this career that I chose. It's not an easy career. Even when you get, more and more success, then there's another tier that you're fighting to be in, right? And there's always that. I think everybody, I was going to say in this room, this is not everyone on God's earth is dealing with that in one way or another, where you're always setting goals for yourself and you're always coming into conflict with obstacle. And James prepared me for that. Granted, he took an unorthodox approach.
But I don't know. Is that right? Is it, maybe there's truth in that, but also isn't that the kind of thing a jerk says as you run out of the room crying, if you can't handle me, you won't be able to handle this business. And it's not like he ever pulled you aside and said, hey, I think you're a little arrogant. I think you're coming on too strong.
No,
I think
that's fair.
He just seems like he just treated you terribly.
He did. He did, and I called him out on it. After I did my last show on Broadway, Gutenberg, I went out to dinner with him one night. Thank you to the one person who saw that. And I actually said, he said to me, he goes, "What did you think of working with me?" And I said, "I hated it. You were a dick." And he started laughing. And he said, "Yeah, I guess I was, but it made you better." That part of it is true. I can't debate that. I choose when I'm working with people not to lead like that. For me, it's not. I think that you can achieve the same kind of success and the same kind of outcome, and probably more so by leading with kindness and respect than leading with aggression, cruelty, whatever you want to call it. And I choose to live and practice a different way, but I continue to work with others who don't. And you have to be amenable to both, I think.
Yeah.
Wasn't Barack Obama hard on you, John?
No. Barack Obama, there were moments where he would be dissatisfied with a speech, but it was always with respect. Barack Obama as a public figure is not that dissimilar from Barack Obama as a person behind the scenes, which is he doesn't go off he's very measured and contained.
I can't imagine.
And I've worked with, I think that's actually, even if he weren't, and I've worked for a bunch of different people over the years, and I think that there are ways in which people can be not their best selves in moments of anger. They can be frustrated, they can be upset, and they'll say something they regret, and the rest of the time you understand that they're trying their best. They feel guilty after they come up to you, they say, "Oh, I went a little too far there. I was frustrated. It was this other thing. I'm sorry it came out that way." But this is somebody that seems to have been, you were afraid of the days when he would be there because he'd keep giving you notes. And it's not as though you weren't doing well. You clearly were, because you go from there to Book of Mormon. You go from Book of Mormon to Olaf. You go from Olaf to Gutenberg. you've had an unalloyed series of moments where you are a singing performer of being extraordinarily successful, and yet whenever he comes to the show, he's telling you he's trying to drag you down a little bit. And I guess the reason I bring that up is because I was thinking about the distinction between that and your forensics teacher, who also was hard on you. But I do think there's a difference, right, between people that are hard on you where you know they love you and people who are hard on you where you think that they hate you.
I think that that's very accurate. I think that that's very fair. And I was a mess. I started to have anxiety attacks. I started to fall into a deep depression. It's also very hard if you've never had the experience replacing a Broadway performer who originated a role, who's a Tony winner. It's very hard coming in and assuming that position. You feel like a fraud already, and you feel like you don't belong, and you know that you're the odd person out because the rest of the original cast is still there. So all of that was weighing on me. And I would come home from shows and people are like, wasn't your Broadway debut the most incredible thing ever? And I would say, no, it was probably the lowest I've ever been because I was so scared. I had imposter syndrome. I didn't believe in myself. That was really scary. And I would, whenever I would see him, I would be fearful.
Can you talk about what it was like then? So that is sort of the beginning of an ascent for you. And there's, ups and downs throughout, but you come back to you do that show. You originate the part in
Book of
Mormon. There it is. And you then come back to Broadway for Gutenberg, where now it is a show built around you. When you did Spelling Bee, you were on a couch. Now you are the star of a musical that people are coming to see. And then your dad comes to see the show. Your dad who you're estranged from. And can you just talk about what that was like?
Yeah, so my father, when I go into detail in the book about my relationship with my dad, my parents got divorced when I was around 6 years old. And, my dad not only cheated on my mom, but had another family. And then let me know that by introducing me to a brother I never knew I had at the age of 7, which will mess you up.
Timothy Chalamet.
Correct. I'm very proud of him now, but it took me time to get there. In part because he was always far more handsome than I. And I hadn't seen my dad in 20 years. And we'd spoken here and there. And I get a phone call saying, I'm in New Jersey and I'd like to come see your show. And I realized my dad had never seen me perform on stage. Not as a child, not as a high schooler, not in college, not in professional life. And I was very torn, and I said, okay, you can come, but it's gotta be on my terms. You come alone, and I'll send a car for you. Why don't you stick around after, and let's chat. And I was very nervous, and my co-star Andrew Rannells was incredibly supportive and was just talking through it. And I was like, how is your hair so beautiful? And he's like, what? And my dad came backstage after. It was Halloween, and Andrew and I were both dressed as Mommy Dearest. What's her name?
It's Faye Dunaway.
Faye Dunaway and the daughter.
It's Joan Crawford, right?
Yeah, No More Wire Hangers girl. And my dad was so confused. And I brought him back to my apartment, and we just sat for 3 hours talking. And it was one of the most cathartic experiences I've ever had, because I finally... You guys know the song Cat's Cradle? And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. And then what happens? The son is in the same position, and he doesn't have time for the dad. And I was the son. And I had moved on. And it was both like a moment in which I realized, holy shit, I no longer long for this love and affection that I had so desperately needed growing up, because I had an incredible stepdad who took that place. And at the same time, I learned to love him again on my own terms, in my own way. And that felt powerful. That felt good. And it felt like I had closure, and it was a profound evening, and I was happy that I did it.
So, has there been a moment when you really felt like, will it ever happen, where you feel like, all right, I did it, right? Whether it's Spelling Bee, Book of Mormon, Olaf, Gutenberg, is there a moment where you could say, I'm good now, I don't have to feel afraid all this can go away? Or just even now, do you feel, because like when we did 600 Pen together, there was always a feeling with you, and I think it's part of your success, of an impulse to keep working on it, because if it's not good enough, they're all going to laugh at us, but not in the way we're trying to get.
I'm still that guy. Now, having said that, how many of you have seen Frozen? So here's where I can sleep at night, and I talk about this in the book, is a part of what we do is about legacy. It's about what will I leave behind. And knowing that a movie like Frozen will be generationally shared long after I'm gone is really beautiful. It makes me feel like, okay, this one thing at the very least is a gift that I've been given that will live long after I'm here. And similarly with Book of Mormon, I don't even understand how a show in which we talk about fucking frogs is now in its 15th year on Broadway. And you never know where it's going to come from. You never know when those things are going to fall into your lap. And at the same time, I can never rest on my laurels, and it's why I always keep challenging and this is why I love you. You do the same thing. It's never good enough. It's always...
No, there's a hole in our buckets.
Yeah.
There's a hole in there.
That's right.
Gotta keep putting more water in.
You gotta put more water in, and I think till my dying day, I'll be looking for more challenges and more ways of proving not only to my audience, but to myself, that I can do something I was too scared to do.
Well, that's a good place to leave it. We have time for a few questions, I think. And so if anybody has a question, raise your hand.
Sure, let's do that. I'll come to you. I'll hold the mic.
There's a gentleman right over there.
Right over there. Okay. Can you come close to the hedge? Hi, your name and your question.
My name's Edward.
Hi, Edward.
Josh.
Hi.
I recently saw you at Knott's Berry Farm with you and your lovely family.
Yes, great question.
I hear you've been working with Mel Brooks on a sequel to Spaceballs. How's that experience been?
One of the greatest experiences of my life. Mel is 98 years old, 98 years young, I should say. And I have had the fortune of doing this sequel that has been prophesized since 1987, and being able to engage with him on a comedic level has been one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. I wish I could tell you more.
Well, you told me backstage that one of the most interesting parts was taking his hand like Lex Luthor and signing the contract.
I never said that, Ethan. I never said that. You're so fucked up. But Mel is incredible. I've told this story before, but I can tell you, the first time I ever pitched him on the movie, I sort of had to catch him up on the last 40 years of Star Wars. And so I'm like walking him through all, I am sweating, I am running through like, you know, everything, trying to explain Rey, trying to explain Kylo, trying to explain Reylo, all of it. And then I finish, and I'm waiting for a reaction, and he goes, well, it sounds like you really have your finger on the pulse.
That's in the book. It's very funny. That got me. Thank you.
All right, someone on this side, and then I'll come back to this side. I need to be fair to this side. Come to the aisle if you can. Yeah. By the way, guys, your buckets look pretty full to us, so
Oh, thank you.
Oh, hey.
we appreciate you.
Hi. So you've been in projects that are kind of telling stories that are really iconic, like Murder on the Orient Express and Beauty and the Beast. And I just wanted to know, like, did you feel a lot of pressure going into that because there's so many people that kind of grow up loving these stories, and it's just something you want to like make sure you're doing justice to?
That's a brilliant question. I turned down Beauty and the Beast because I was so scared about. That is a perfect movie. That is the first animated movie ever nominated for Best Picture. And what I had said is, unless there's a different way in which, by the way, just full disclosure, I asked to bring in some writers to help me rethink the character of LeFou, and one of those writers was John Lovett. And came in, and we talked a lot about, like, how do we take this guy and make him less of a buffoon and more of a three-dimensional character who's got an arc? And out of that came that character, and I'm so proud of that character and the love that people have. Same with Orient Express. It's how do you live in the shadow of not only one version of that movie, but multiple versions of that movie. And so you try to find your own way in. And
That's why the Josh version, it's all on a boat.
that is not accurate at all.
What if it's on a boat? Have we considered a boat? I will say when I occasionally get invited to go to table reads or script reads like for Beauty and the Beast, and little does Josh know, at every single one I pitch making at least 3 characters gay. It's my move. I've read your script. I think it can work. One problem.
No, yeah, that answered the question. One last thing, I'm obsessed with Emma Watson. I just want to know how it was working with her.
Oh, Emma is incredible. She was like a little sister to me. She is so good. My greatest frustration is that she chooses not to work more, because I think that she is spectacular, and I'm equally a giant fan of hers.
Thank you for that question. I promised someone over here. Yes, in front. Hi, tell us your name and your question.
My name is Nora, and I'm wondering if you weren't here right now, like if it was just a normal day, what would you be doing?
Oh, cute.
My dog died yesterday, and you're an asshole for asking that question. I would be holding my girls, which I did last night. Raise your hand if you've been in the situation where you've had to put a pet down. It's the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do. We sat with her yesterday and we sobbed, and each of us, including my 2 beautiful girls, said their goodbyes, and we told her how much she meant to us and how she changed every part of our lives. And we held each other and we cried in each other's arms, and we got home and we started sobbing again, and it's been really hard. And at the same time, I would do it all over again, because it was the greatest gift to have that dog. And when I woke up this morning and I knew I was coming here, I was really grateful, because getting to talk to people like you, getting to have moments like this, it allows you to retain the love that you have for these amazing animals that we have in our lives. But it also allows you to remember that life moves on. and that they stay with us. I did a movie called A Dog's Purpose, which I really, really, really do not recommend you watch after losing a pet. But it's cathartic because, especially for my kids, we have something to look at to say she will continue to be with us. And so if I weren't here, I would be sitting home crying. So I'm grateful to be here.
It also, by the way, speaks to what a generous and good-natured person Josh is, because like I'm the person that hit the dog with my car. and he was just like, we're not going to talk about it. We got to get past it. I got to bring the mood up. We're almost at the end. You're like, one last thing. My dog died. We were having such a good fucking time.
It's not my fault. It's her fault.
Her question is, what do you like to do on the weekends?
I like the...
You're like, oh, my dog died. That sucks.
It's making me long for the non-question about Knott's Berry fucking Farm. I want to go back there.
All right, one last
By the way,
non-death question.
Ethan, when you were at
please.
Knott's Berry Farm, did you go on hang time? That's the most evil ride I've ever been on in my life. You're in a, they don't even put a harness on you. You're in a seatbelt with this thing I've got. And you go up vertically like this, John. So when you're going up, you feel like you're about to fall out. And then it does this evil thing where it's about to go down, but it's like, nah, I'm going to stop for 5 seconds. And you are hanging like this. And then it goes like this. The most evil ride imaginable. Go on it.
When I was there was a ride called Montezuma's Revenge. And I don't know if it's still there, but it's pretty strange to name a ride after diarrhea. Is it not there anymore? They closed it?
I didn't go on that.
It's not. It's a tough name.
Your name and your question, please.
Hi, I'm Gia.
Hi, Gia.
I am a student at Fullerton College, and I am a musical theater major, so this is kind of a big deal for me. But recently I've been taking a sabbatical because of bad people and just bullying, and I wondered if you ever went through that, and how, if you did you deal with that?
Fuck bullies. Truly. I hate bullies. Let me tell you something about bullies. I'm a byproduct of bullying, and I am so much more successful than any of my bullies. Okay? Don't ever let them get to you. You know why they're bullies? Because they're jealous. Because they're insecure. Because they don't have what you have. And there's this narrative lately that empathy and sympathy are bad things. Fuck y'all who believe that. Empathy is what makes us who we are. Kindness is what makes us different than any other species. That we have the ability to choose to be kind, to choose to be generous. And so I have no tolerance for bullying. I have no patience for bullying. And I will tell you right now, you, my dear, will be whatever you want to be. And don't let any of those bastards get in your way.
All right. Speaking of bullies, we are out of time.
You son of a bitch.
Yes.
Well, this was a lot of fun, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you
And by
guys
the way,
so much.
let me just say, it's a really fun and entertaining book. Really worth reading. Everybody, get a copy of Gad We Trust. Josh is going to sign them, probably.
I will.
All right, great.
Thank
Get
you
a-
guys.
Get
Love
over
you
to
guys.
Romans and pick up your copy of
Thank you.
In Gad We Trust. Once again, big hand for Josh Gad and John Lovett.